Welcome to Total Network Operations, the project with a podcast dedicated to hardworking network operators like you who deliver all the packets. We drive conversations on great ideas in NetOps so you can make informed decisions for your network and your team, and to spur constructive dialogue between vendors, NetOps teams, and across the NetOps community. I'm your host, Scott Robon. And today, I'm just going to get it out there right away. We have John Capobianco of Selector.ai. John is Selector's head of DevRel, and he's simply one of the most prominent people in the community helping all of us understand how to use AI and NetOps and much more. I can't keep up with him. I'm sure I'll get some updates here in the conversation today. I'm looking forward to it. But let's dive in. John, thanks so much for being here. And start with your journey, like how you got into networking, how you got into automation, and where you've ended up in AI today.
Sure. So it's quite a long story, and I'll try to keep it brief for everyone. But I found myself on academic probation from Queen's University for maybe some digital things I was doing and some poor grades. I'll leave it at that because I don't know the statute of limitations. Yeah. I ended up working at an aluminum factory, Alcan, in Kingston, Ontario, for about 5 years. And after 2 years of that, 12-hour shifts, very heavy labor, dangerous work, not a whole lot of brain power involved. I decided to go back and to take a computer programming course, a 3-year program. So I made arrangements with the union and the company to get onto a certain rotation of shifts where I could go to school in the daytime. And after that, there was a struggle, right? You graduate, you got bright eyes and big dreams that I'm going to write code. And I got, a 3-month contract here, a 6-month contract there. I found myself drifting towards IT instead of IS, though. So I ended up getting my A+ and N+ in like 2004, and I'll come back to the N+. But then heavy on Microsoft certs. So my career has big chunks of real delineated tasks and interest. So it was really, desktop server, client server for quite a while. And I got my Microsoft certified IT professional, which is like 7 or 8 exams. Right. Literally the week I got that exam, I was reorged to the network because I had what? Because I also had my Network Plus. So in the minds of senior leadership, this, MCC from Microsoft but it was like parity with the Network Plus. They're like, this Microsoft cert's great, but you also have some networking certs, right? So I got moved to networking. I made an arrangement to go on the CCNA bootcamp as part of this reorg, right? Give me a fighting chance. Send me on the boot camp. I'm into certifications, generally speaking. And I think, I see a lot of interesting Cisco certifications that I'd like to, if I'm going to be networking, then that's what I'd like to pursue, right? So I did that for a very long time, probably 15 years. I moved to Ottawa to become a senior network architect at the Parliament of Canada. And this is where automation comes in. Now, Scott, I think there's kind of 2 distinct forms of automation. Automation was always part of the Windows space. Things like WSUS for Windows updates to clients and, desktop imaging was all automated. And, there was a lot of things that group policies, all of this stuff was sort of automated already. For my first task at Parliament, it was a green field and we really just needed to stand up infrastructure and quickly, like get 40 or 50 buildings online with a distribution layer and access layers and et cetera, right? So we did a lot of zero-touch provisioning at that time, which is a form of automation. I don't want to dismiss that, right? So we had a central controller, a special VLAN, we'd plug in the stack, it would pull the config and be ready to drop ship. Really powerful, really ahead at the time. But then we shifted into operating this network, right? So, it's all built now. Now it becomes day-to-day, day one plus N, right?
Yep.
Totally different problems to solve. I found Ansible in about 2014 through Yvonne Pepelniak's work through IP Space.
Sure.
I'm sure you've heard of Carl Buckman from Arista.
I'm talking to Carl later today. Yep.
Well, he's gone on to build the AVD program. Well, ask him about our work together at Parliament and sort of the genesis of the AVD program. Carl and I, we journeyed through Ansible together for years, quite literally a few years together before he went to Arista and I left Parliament to go to Cisco. I write a book in 2019. Here's a tip for you if you're going to promote a book. Don't write and release a book and then a month later find a new technology and start telling people not to use the old technology and don't read the book. There's a better way to do things. So that's me.
It might
with
be really
PyTS.
relevant for many pieces of the conversation today, right?
Yes. So I find PyTS and Ansible in around 2019, mainly out of necessity. It's just like Ansible, necessity. I had 50 routers I wanted to push a VLAN change to, or a VRF change, excuse me. And we did the calculus, and it was like, listen, I think we could figure out Ansible in about 3 weeks a month, the time it would take for us to do this by hand.
Sure.
So let's just invest the time. And we had full backing of our leadership, which was a real key. I move into PyTS, write a book about PyTS. Now, where does AI come into this? I signed up for ChatGPT like the minute it came out in November of 2022. It feels like a really long time ago now, right?
Really, it really does.
But the watershed moment was getting API access, Scott. So I got API access in February, the big release of 3.5. Here's a REST API. You don't have to chat with it through a GUI. Immediately, I made a PyTS job to get show interfaces and send that payload to the AI to analyze.
Okay.
And that was in February of 2023.
Yeah.
And since that, like that moment, I have literally devoted every minute, every cycle I have free to the pursuit of AI and network automation because of what I saw it could do, right?
Perhaps more than every available minute of your day devoted to it. I don't know how you keep up. So that's the beginning of this industry inflection point that we're living through right now. And a lot has happened. Let's make sure. Can you just talk a little bit about Selector and what Selector is doing here? And then that'll make it easier for you to connect things to Selector throughout the conversation. So a little commercial. This is a sponsored episode. You're perfectly willing to do that. Yeah.
Well, I was sort of getting to there chronologically. So after about 2 years of doing AI with Cisco, and they really let me explore and F around and find out and go try this, go try that. There's new things coming every day. But I didn't feel I was making the impact I could have. And I also felt they were moving, for me personally, a little slow. And there was also a lot of internal, even to this day, I see certain developer advocates from them talking about AI finally. But, I don't want to say I was ostracized or anything, but it wasn't necessarily fully embraced, let's say, culturally, right? A colleague of ours, a mutual friend, I'm going to leave them anonymous. They sent me a video a year before I left Selector from Selector, a 1-minute teaser, like a hello world video. And I sat there dumbfounded. I equate it to, because I'd been doing this and I'd been trying it. And how do we use AI with networks? And there's got to be like there is something to this.
Right.
I saw this video that was a minute long and I sat there dumbfounded. I watched it over and over and over again. I showed it to my wife and said, listen, look, someone's actually doing what I'm trying to do. Like, I felt like the Beach Boys when they heard Sergeant Pepper, right? Like, I totally felt like everything I'd been doing was obsolete and for naught and a waste of time. There's actually a commercial enterprise, a startup, who's perfected at an enterprise level what I've been trying to do at Cisco. A year later, Conan reached out because he had seen some of my talking to packets work.
Sure.
And saw some overlap there, but generally was impressed and saw my enthusiasm for AI and saw that he had a fit for an evangelist. He had some room for someone to go out there and talk about what we're talking about right now. So I really, give him credit as the leader of the company to see that they needed someone in this role who could really champion Selector and get the name out and use my whatever credibility I have to help say that there really is AIOps. There really is a solution for enterprise that you can, do things like I was trying to do, talk to your network, a network language model, fine tuning an open source model or a foundational model with network telemetry, DVR capability to rewind and move ahead, predictive capability, all these AI augmentations. And Selector is doing it and has been doing it for a few years now. So I'm extremely fortunate.
Yeah, no, I feel exactly the same way. Like, I am so grateful for the people and things that have helped me along to this point in my career. And I've worked with Conan and Nitin from way back. And so when they started Selector, even before all the AI capability was there, definitely was something to pay attention to. So I affirm from a different angle everything you just said about how Selector came to be. Now, this Cambrian explosion, right, from your first Chat GPT access to getting API access to everything that's happened in the last 3 years, how did we get here so quickly, and how are things changing so quickly here? How do you explain that?
Well, I think you can remember having to use static routes, for example.
Sure, long
But
time ago in a
right,
galaxy far,
but did,
far away. Yeah,
right, but did
yeah,
you not hit a certain scale? Did you not hit a certain frustration and say, "Holy cow, there's got to be a better way to do this," right?
sure. Yeah, I
And
remember
what do we need?
floating static routes were cool, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but what we needed was a protocol. We
yeah,
needed
yeah,
BGP. We needed OSPF. We need spanning tree. We need right, and even a layer 7 protocols. Think of okay, if you did not have access to SMTP, we would all still be using pen and paper to write
right.
letters and put stamps
Yep,
on things, right?
yep,
Literally days worth of latency if we're trying to communicate around. Like
for
the
sure.
world we have today does not exist without the protocol SMTP. It just does not, right? So what happens? AI comes out, REST APIs, people start building tools. I feel like RAG, retrieval augmented generation, sort of filled the gap for about a year, but then
Mm-hmm.
it itself has some drawbacks and it's not perfect. So, but what we wanted to get to was sort of these agents, right? Autonomous, truly independent beings, right? For a lack of a better term,
Right.
coworkers,
Yeah.
right? So I thought the Anthropic MCP protocol from 7 months ago when they announced it, that to me is another watershed, is another inflection
Yeah.
point. It's kind
Yep.
of like the inflection point of right moving from a router with static routes to dynamic routing tables, right?
Yep.
So model context protocol, I don't want to say late on it, but they asked me how do I keep up. It was announced, let's call it December of last year.
Right.
Around March, I started to really pay attention to it, meaning started to build some things with it. And then by April, I was like all on board and evangelizing it and seeing other pockets of developers and advocates
Sure.
and influencers also adopting it, but more so Microsoft adopting it, Amazon adopting it, GitHub adopting it.
Yep.
Like, these are like the Steven Spielbergs of the world, right? They don't get it wrong.
Right.
You tend not to go see a bad Steven Spielberg movie, right? You
Right.
tend not to have a bad Google tool or Microsoft tool. So
Sure.
that's when I really started to pay attention. Like, well, is this really like when we say protocol, right? We're moving from, let's say, REST APIs to model context protocol. That's where I think the shift is going to happen here. Much like moving from static routes to dynamic protocols, right? Now,
I think it's something that networkers can really accept and understand. Like, okay, I understand protocols, right?
Exactly.
And now it's more than stitching things together. And I think, I say I understand API access, but how many of us have actually done that? This puts it in terminology and gives a framework that we're very, very comfortable with.
I mean, I don't want to make bold claims, but I feel like
Sure you do.
that we've entered a new era. Like I feel like from 2001 to 2024 was the era of the REST API.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everything was about REST APIs. And what really is that about is connecting data, machine to machine data, human to now I would suggest MCP comes along in 2025 and we're talking about connecting intelligence. It's not connecting data, we're actually connecting artificial intelligence and intelligence of some form. Now, the other thing is, this is really good news for networking people. This is not another programming language to learn, another data structure to learn. It's all natural language. So, for example, I made a video about how to make a subnet calculator MCP for yourself, just to show you how to do one.
Sure.
I have the packet copilot from Selector now has an MCP server. How do you, as a network engineer, connect to this? It's one line of JSON in an MCP client. That's it. And network engineers are good with clients, FTP clients, email clients, browsers, web clients, etc. Right?
Yep.
We all understand client server architecture, right?
Yep.
We all understand DHCP. So this is neat about MCP. The MCP server is going to have tools, and your client just discovers those tools. Much like a client on a network asks for an address and discovers it and is offered one, right? In a very similar way. So now I can literally say, can you please help me understand the packet capture.pcap, enter at the command line in a terminal. And that's it. The magic happens and you get an answer back. And this is the source IP. This is the destination IP. Here's the port numbers. Here's the latency. You may want to pay attention to this particular packet that looks malformed. That is it. No Python, no JavaScript, no REST API, no COBOL. No, right? Like it truly is natural language, Scott. So that's why I'm saying we're entering a new era. And for the last 10 years, some of us have really tried to champion, and in my case, almost force upon the network community, network automation. And some people reel back in terror when you say the first thing you need to do is install VS Code. And they go, code? Like I intentionally went into networks to not have to learn how to code.
Right.
DevNet comes along in 2020 and sort of changes that paradigm, and you sort of have a new expectation. As a network engineer, you have to learn Git and Python and Ansible and CI/CD pipelines and et cetera, right? Like, what's your take on this?
I think, I've been doing network automation things for 30 years. My first project was using expect scripts on Bay Networks routers just to discover things and, mimicking the command line and waiting for the response because the CPUs weren't always fast enough. But we've all done something with network automation, whether we realize it or not. And I think your point about protocol-like behaviors, that's automation, right? And look at the improvements we made in the automation of routing protocols to how RIP worked, to how IGRP and EIGRP worked, then to OSPF and ISIS. You want those mechanisms to happen automatically. You don't want to babysit them. You don't want to have to nail up static routes, PVCs, LSPs, and MPLS. You want all that to happen automatically, and protocols are how that happens. So there is a sense in which this should be such a natural thing for people to understand. There is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. There are, the automation conversation on taking my work away, making my work more meaningless. There's going to be disruption. I don't want to deny that, and people need to be ready for that.
Right. But I think there's an exciting opportunity because a lot of us are dreamers and a lot of us imagine in our head. And some of us have the, let's say, coding chops to pull off some of this stuff, is to say, wouldn't it be neat if I could go get the routing table and then maybe send it into GitHub and then send a Slack message, maybe put a ServiceNow ticket if the default route's not there or wrong, maybe give me some analysis of this stuff. That used to be, Git. Okay, I need to make a REST API call. I need to do this. I need to do that. We're into 200 lines of code. Now I want to do Slack messages. There's another 150 lines of code. It's all bespoke. It's all snowflake. It's all fragile. It's all brittle. Well, now this sort of MCP idea comes along, and that exact same thing. I go MCP shopping, and I plug in the Slack MCP, the GitHub MCP, the ServiceNow MCP, with the PyETS MCP that John wrote 4 months ago. It's changing the industry. Anyway, you just plug them in as JSON lines that say, MCP server, PyETS, and here's a few lines of JSON. Now you can literally just talk to your routers. You do not have to, I think you can, let's say, jump to the front of the line. I think every network engineer out there right now, if they put down the PyETS book and put down the Python books and just jump right to MCP, you're skipping 15 years of friction and resistance. And we don't have a global standard on how to automate a network, let's say, that never emerged. There's hundreds of ways to do it, thousands of different opinions on this. Well, now it's all homogenized into a protocol, right? And I think that you can truly skip to the front of the line here, right? That's great. Again, telling people not to buy my latest book, right?
No, look, that's all good, and I think that's a function of the incredible increase in the rate of change, the acceleration of tooling that's coming out. I would love your take on, Anthropic pushing MCP out there hey, we created this. What do you all think? And the rapid adoption compared and contrasted with, no disrespect to our friends who are very active in IETF, but nothing happens that quickly. Through those bureaucratic mechanisms today, and I use bureaucratic in the literal sense. How did we get to this rate of MCP adoption, experimentation, and real use in 8-9 months compared to how long it takes to get a draft ratified?
Yeah, so I can't really speak too much to the IETF side. I think telecom is a little different than making a protocol standard for, let's say, pure software, right? There's a lot involved with telecommunications, including networking infrastructure and ASICs and down to the physical wires or bandwidth. Right, it's a sort of a different ball game. But what I really thought was neat was just how the utility of this protocol. It was almost self-evident when it came out. So in those 7 months, there's over 16,000 MCP servers that are public.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what's the number now.
It's at 16,000 on the clearinghouses that you can find out there. There's also things like the Awesome MCP Guide, a GitHub repo that just tracks cool MCPs, right? That sort of helped popularize it. It was a real grassroots. It was kind of like the rise of IRC, or it's just this new protocol that really smoothed out a lot of friction for people. One, in writing the MCP, and so in creating a server, and two, in these new popularized clients. I mean, you can't get an easier experience than VS Code. Right. So the fact that you can just plug MCPs into your VS Code now is, it's a force multiplying. It's more than just an extension. It truly is a new protocol that you've snapped into your IDE, right? I do think that there's some good things happening on the A2A front. We see that Cisco's donated their agency code to the Linux Foundation, and someone else donated a protocol to I think A2A itself has moved to the Linux Foundation from Google.
Okay. Yep.
Now MCP, I think that's going to be tougher to donate now.
Sure.
Maybe 4 months ago, right? They could have released it and maybe given it away. But I think that's Anthropic's baby now, and I don't blame them for keeping that a little closer to their chest, right?
Well, we'll see. I mean, they've been, I think, great community players with it so far.
Yeah.
And the 0 to 16,000 in however many, months we're talking about, I think that's because of the utility, right? People have found it extremely useful. Now, can you just, without doing a full tutorial, and you have so much other content you can point people to, what does it take to define an MCP server? Do you want to use your subnet calculator or even Selector as examples of what went into defining those MCPs?
Sure. So a lot of people, first of all, an MCP can be, but does not have to be, a proxy to a REST API. Right. So in the case of certain tools like the Selector tool for Selector's platform, one, it's just /MCP. So it's just your Selector URL as a customer, your instance /MCP. You add that in your bearer token to your JSON, and you're off to the races in your client, or build it into your agent code. Now, to build one, I would look at Fast MCP. Have you ever played with Fast API and made a quick little API front end, right?
I have not. No.
Okay, well, there's tools called Fast API that lets you rapidly build a REST API. Similarly, there's something called Fast MCP. And you quite literally define it and instantiate it, and then use decorators like @mcp.tool. So I would instantiate my Fast MCP instance, decorate the tool, which is then 30 lines of Python to make a subnet calculator. Now that's powerful here, Scott. So if I can write a Python function that multiplies two numbers, we'll just start there, right?
You can do this.
You can literally decorate that as a tool, and now you have a calculator function built into your MCP. Now, there's a couple ways to expose this over HTTP through streaming, or through standard input-output studio if you're doing it local.
Sure.
So there's this concept of truly server, like a remote server out there on the internet somewhere, like the Selector Packet Copilot is on our URL, and you can just talk to it by sending it packets. Or you could run certain MCPs, like maybe the GitHub one is local, right? But writing one, it really, and the idea of vibe coding, right? Combine this with vibe coding and the fact that GPT-5 now understands the MCP protocol because as part of its new corpus of knowledge, it's learned about MCP. So I would open up VS Code on one side with a blank file called John's MCP test. I'd open up Copilot and I'd say, help me make a calculator function. And now wrap it as a tool in MCP. Now add a server and now help me integrate it in VS Code. Like within 5 minutes, you can have a working MCP, Scott, or our listeners out there. And I don't want anyone to be afraid. Like none of this is like shark bite terror inducing stuff anymore. Because I used to do things like Python code and tell people, okay, this isn't for the faint of heart. We're going to get in here and start making classes and functions.
Right.
Right.
I would say, look, this is one of the things I've appreciated about you from the start. You are unafraid to try things publicly and admit failure when it happens, because that's going to happen to all of us, right? And what harm was done? Nothing really. Okay,
Right.
you learned. You tried something, it didn't work. You learned. And you have this macro of disrespecting your PyATS book. You've just learned new ways as tools have evolved, and you love the analogy that I use for you. You're the guy with the machete through the dense jungle, cutting the way through, and others of us will follow along eventually at different rates.
Well,
right.
Yeah. So on failure, there's a lot of ways that I try to, so one, my favorite error message is a new error message.
Wow.
Right. So
most people can't say that, but right. I hear
but
you.
it truly is, because something has changed.
Sure.
If the error was a 400 message and I've changed that to a 404, hang on.
Right.
Okay. Something has changed in my code. I've affected the computer, the electrified sand in some way. Right. It's doing something different now. So my favorite error is a new error message. And honestly, so let's take baseball. The best average for a season is still 416, Ted Williams, right? 100. It's
baseball fan identified. Yep.
Okay. Right, but it's decades. That's decades now that record has stood. Now, but take that number, 416. So 0.4 out of 10 times, or 4 out of 10 times. That's less than 50%. That's the best hitter of all time. And what do? They fail 6 out of 10 times.
That's right. Yep.
Right? So I don't expect everything to work, but I expect to have fun during the process of failing, right? I try to have breakpoints where I leave on a success. Don't go any further because there's more errors ahead. But now is a good place to stop, because
let's take a break. That's right. Celebrate. Celebrate this. Yeah. I would also say, and this will be an admission from me, like when the talk about vibe coding started, and I heard you use the term vibe ops, like my initial reaction was my eyes rolled in the back of my head. It's like, are you kidding me? But I thought about it for a couple months, and I realized, this is just something we've been doing in engineering for decades. And it's called prototyping. Like we, as engineers, my grandfather built handheld power tools for Porter Cable. And I have a couple of his prototypes right over on the other side of my desk. They're older than me and they still work. But they never went on a store shelf. They didn't go in production. They're missing some guards to some dangerous bits. I wouldn't ever claim that, me mocking up this model in my shop in the basement is production ready and fully secured. Vibe ops, vibe coding is just a modern instantiation of that, in my view. Do you see it differently? Is there nuance you want to add there?
I love that. And from those prototypes, I'm sure there might be the placement of one spring that made it into the production model that changed everything for the company, right?
Yep, you got it.
We are
on the same page.
I love that idea of prototyping and physically. So I like this idea of, so I think we're sort of almost there with Vibe Ops. When I can say to Selector, how's the health of the Wi-Fi in my store in Atlanta?
Right.
And it goes, well, it's not good. And I go, well, what's not good about it, right? Why do I have drops? Can you increase the radio power?
Right.
Like, did I log into a GUI? Did I launch any tools? Did I type any code? I like that. To me is the sort of idea of vibe operating. it's a Star Trek-ish thing, and it's not even science fiction.
Sure.
From
Right.
Slack, I can type in /select, invoke the Selector agent on my phone and say,
Yep.
network device health right now in the data center, right? It's a remarkable thing, and it really democratizes it, because I could be the CTO, I could be the security person, I could be the network person, I could be the frontline help desk person,
Yep.
each with our own personas and biases and language and way we ask questions. But that data is now accessible to all of us, regardless of their technical acumen in Python or REST APIs or dashboard memorization, right?
Right. Yep. No, I think the killer use case is natural language processing. And you're seeing this across the board. There are other networking vendors that are doing a great job with just letting you talk to the device's network. And that's only going to get better. I've seen some interesting, I want to be careful because I want to name names here, but I won't. There's been maybe our expectations about talking to the network have been too high, and we do need to think a little more with specificity in how we ask our questions. I get that. What's your reaction to that? Have you seen the material I'm talking about here?
Yeah, I have, and so I do this bit about retrieval augmented generation and fine tuning and stuff, right? And my slide says people ask stupid questions. Right now, that's meant to get a laugh, but actually, what happens is everyone kind of nods along. Well, yeah, people ask pretty stupid questions, right?
I was an instructor for a long time. People do ask stupid
right. There's
questions.
more agreement with my statement than laughter, right?
But it's anyway, okay. Ask the stupid questions. You should be able to.
Right.
Yes.
But what I think is interesting is we have this generative AI capability. So why don't we take that, let's say, less than adequately worded question, and use the AI to help augment the original question itself. Right? Here's the question from the user. Can you derive 5 similar questions of a similar theme, maybe with a little bit more sophistication? And then that is the question we send to the AI.
Right.
So it's turtles all the way down, right? Like there's no there's no limitation to our where we place this AI capability. It could be right up front dealing with the user's question and trying to massage the best question out of those words or that phrase, right?
I think another interesting thing that we'll need to watch, like with the release of GPT-5 and its the nuances that it's how it's operated differently from its predecessors, when things change in a model that affects how we've prompted or even given API calls to it, that's a new dimension of us having to like be wise and say, well, maybe this model isn't best fit for these NetOps type applications.
Right. That is a good point. And it's toned down a little bit on the self-congratulatory
the
sycophancy. Miss that sycophant version of the model. That's a great idea, John. Let's pursue that. Things like that.
I do. So there are modes where I had this, one of my aha moments was at a tech field day earlier this year where I heard a gentleman from British Telecom talking about quantum computing and quantum networking. I left the event a little grumpy old manish, not being satisfied with what I heard. And then I realized the root cause was I didn't really understand what was said. Like at the end of the day, it's like I was having trouble grokking what's going on here. And that's when I said, okay, let's try this patient tutor mode. And I used Grok and ChatGPT on the way home from San Jose to Atlanta to Charlottesville, Virginia. And sycophancy or not, it's never going to tell you, Scott, you're an idiot for asking that question. You've asked the same question 6 times. It's really useful in personal tutor mode as well.
Oh, so, absolutely. Think of all the I don't know, we've all been through formal education. And I'm sure we've all had maybe not the best experience with a lack of empathy from a teacher or something, right?
I think so.
We don't deal with that like it truly is there to help us, right?
That's why I'm not a computer engineer, John.
But this sort of, I think it does give rise to this idea of a digital coworker, right? So and I think that certain people have made a really good distinction between a co-pilot, maybe that helps you as a singular individual, but truly a co-worker with an avatar, a personality, a skill set. And it's not going to be, I don't think AGI, I think we were off with this idea of AGI. I think it's going to be hyper-focused experts, like a networking expert that has
Yeah,
access to tools like
I can see that.
MCPs,
Yeah,
right? That you invoke, you talk with, you collaborate with. Let's
right.
invite let's just call it Joey or something, right?
Sure.
Let's
Yeah,
invite Joey to this meeting that we're all cramming about, and we're looking at logs and we're looking at
right,
timestamps and right, or the selector agent. Let's just pull it into the room and
right,
start talking to it. You ask your questions, I ask my questions. It doesn't interrupt. It analyzes the history of the conversation. It uses its tools it has to go get
yeah,
real-time data. Um, and it doesn't get paid. It doesn't get sick. It's always there. Doesn't give you an attitude. I mean, truly, we could be curating the perfect digital coworker for you to work with. It kind of goes back to, there was a bit of a buzz, Jensen Huang from NVIDIA saying
sure,
the future of the IT department is an HR department for agents. And people
sure.
go, oh my God, shock and awe. And they kind of laugh. And that's just a marketing thing. Well, here we are 6 months later after he said that. And I think some organizations are looking at org charts and saying, where do our digital coworkers fit into this org chart, right?
Right, right. Well, people are already proving, getting agent boss mentality, right, and spinning up as many different agents. Different functions. You have different capacities. I think there'll be interesting debate over the avatar and personality aspect of things. Like personally, that's just something that creeps me out. I realize I'm not everybody, and other people may be totally comfortable with that, and maybe I'll just need to get over it eventually. But the core functionality is what is super useful, and moving to that, agents have agency and they can do things autonomously without having to be supervised every step of the way. That's it's a labor saver.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. One, we're working very closely with one of the world's most leading edge ISPs. They really are forward thinking ISP. And they really heavily rely on Selector for their agent. And like you talk about agency, they have this beautiful hierarchy of a supervisor agent. And that supervisor agent has subordinate
Sure.
agents.
Yep.
And calls upon them. And those subordinate agents have access to the MCP and the tools.
Yep.
Now, not to get too sci-fi on you, but imagine a meeting room, and to your point of agency, what if the network agent decides, I think we should get the security agent into this meeting based on what we're seeing, what we're talking about. And now all of a sudden a new agent is in the room as a participant. Do you, Scott, personally care if that is a flesh and blood organism, or if it is a digital coworker that is ephemeral, if it can do the job, if it can?
I want the information to be duly considered. That's what I want. And I would argue the security agent should have been in the room in the beginning anyway.
Right.
That's a different conversation. But yeah, I get the spirit of what you're saying. Yeah, I'm not against what you're saying there at all. It's just the anthropomorphism that we want to put on it.
Right.
It's gonna take me a little while longer.
But just we just leading ahead, because we're talking more about agents now than MCP now.
Sure.
I do have content about A2A. I did it the day after they released it. I tried to really get agent to agent working, and we actually have some. It's funny. It's not funny, but we have customers that have similar interests. We have customers that are partners or customers of each other. Right. So we're getting into a space of an agent at the edge talking to another agent at the edge. Let's say an ISP and a large enterprise, and they both have Selector agents. Those Selector agents over A2A and over the web are going to be able to work collaboratively as, hey, I see a circuit down. Is that your side or my side? Let's open up tickets and get the people involved. Just like we're talking about digital coworkers, right?
Yeah.
So now I've pulled back a little bit on the A2A simply because I think MCP needs to be dug. I feel like maybe the lesson is too early for A2A, and that we should be spending our time exploring MCP right now. The time will come to get to A2A, but master. So we talked about this. I like a layer 2, layer 3 analogy. Layer 2 is MCP and our tools, and DHCP, spanning tree. It's kind of like that stuff. And you could run a network. You could run a layer 2 network and have nodes talking to each other through broadcast, right? But what if you want that whole network to talk to another network out there in the world?
Sure.
Then we get it.
That's hard. Yeah.
That's harder. You can stretch broad,
Yeah.
I'm going to have the guy come on and say, you can stretch broadcast domains. And that's not the point. The point
Right.
is that's when layer 3 comes along.
Yeah.
And we
Sure.
move to a routing protocol that can
Right.
route over the public internet and uses
Sure.
a different structure, right? This is the MCP and A2A linkage. You're going to get a nice tool set working with MCP, and you're going to want to build an agent on top of that to collaborate with your other agents.
Yeah, I think this is incredible, and I've had the privilege of seeing the cooperation and collaboration you're talking about with multiple customers and that service provider, and there'll be more to come from Total Network Operations and Solutional on that. But it's a new era, right? And one of my colleagues, James Dirksen, is basically we've moved from the age of engineering to the age of ideas. Right. And now I can talk to a network, I can talk to a system, I can interrogate and get useful data back without writing the Python, without writing the C, without fully understanding, okay, what does this API need and how really well documented is it anyway? I've got a shim layer over this in MCP and then agents that can actually help me with all of that. So
yeah.
What do you started out talking about your certification journey and Network Plus. Let me kind of go do a full circle on that. We both have been watching the changes in the, it's not DevNet anymore. It's the CCN X automation. There's a lot of AI content that's being driven in there. Talk to me about useful certifications and just playing, getting and trying things. What's the right balance? What do you recommend for people?
Well, first of all, I'm really excited to see, one, that PyETS has made it into the automation track on a couple different levels. I think at all 3 levels.
For sure. You should be proud of that. You should absolutely be proud of that.
I'm really, really proud of that. Yeah, because, it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Well, we can't put it in there because there's no material. And without the material, why have it in there? So we made the material, Danny and I, and to see it in the exam is awesome. The other thing is 20% of the NP level is literally called AI. So 20% of that exam. And within that, there's an MCP, and it literally talks about fast MCP. It calls fast MCP out in the blueprint. Now that is Cisco's pointing a giant shining light on that, saying, know this new library and know how to build an MCP with it. I've put out a video that should help you do that about the subnet calculator. And it also talks about agents. Now, I personally I'm more excited about getting some of these than I was the DevNet. DevNet was it really was DevNet. It was for Cisco platforms, more or less. It looks to be more agnostic now and more generalized than just Cisco knowledge, which I like. Now, for me, though, I don't know. It is a hard balance to strike. I think right now is the time to be building, not necessarily studying. I like to build but that is my own personal. Now, will you get something in your resume? Well, if you have a great GitHub repository, you do have something to show for it in these days, right? So it's not totally lost if you do it in the correct way. Learn in
but
public.
You get that by building. You have that repo to show because this is what I've done.
Right. So you could spend 7 months reading the book, pass or fail the exam, and get the cert to show, look, I've got the cert. They think I know this stuff. Right. Or you could have 7 months and work on vibe coding and code out some awesome repo and say, here's my repo. This is what I've done in the last 7 months. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong. I know early in your career, certifications they open more doors for you if you're coming right out of, if you're a CS major and want to get into this space. I think certifications is still a very valid path. If you're like me and you're kind of long in the tooth, I don't know what another cert's going to do for me at this stage of my life. But I do know the code I write, some of the code I write is making it to production, Scott. And there's a very, that has maybe more meaning to me than a cert, right?
Sure. I totally get that. Yep. To see it actually used by hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of end users.
But your recent show with Francois, who I really do respect, he's been on the automation front for a while.
Yeah.
He may differ about AI. I'm pretty sure he has a different take on AI than I do, but he's led the way for a very long time at Cisco, and I really enjoyed your episode. So people refer back to that. That what Scott just recorded. The other thing, Scott, just on this topic, it's come up recently, and I didn't mean to be flippant in my response. It truly was a genuine response. But someone in the community, they posted about, there's a few people lamenting about this idea of what happens to the junior engineer in this new AI age, right? And as our seniors pulling the ladder up by outsourcing all their work to AI instead of juniors. I don't know. My comment was, I think junior and senior is a pre-AI agent construct. It's a social construct that's not going to carry much meaning in this age of my junior can interrogate something with industry knowledge and domain-specific knowledge. Maybe that's the new buffer. Instead of paging the senior, on-calling the senior, escalating to the senior, I think our juniors are going to be more powerful than ever because we're going to augment them with agents that have domain and industry-specific knowledge. Now, seniors on the other end, I think part of what we should be doing as seniors is getting our knowledge into these models, finding a way to fine-tune models or archive documents that can be used in RAG solutions that augment the specific institution we work for. There's always institutional knowledge, Scott. Like, I don't care if you're a CCIE or not. Day one on the job, you're probably behind the network engineers run that network for 10 or 15 years, right?
Sure.
How do we get that institutional knowledge into juniors' hands?
No, I hear more and more people talking about how do we get this into our LLM, our knowledge base, so it can be effectively accessible to many more. I like your idea of junior versus senior not being a valid construct going forward. I'm going to chew on that. I would say junior is a proxy for lack of experience, which is a proxy for lack of skills. But now if I can really empower people with information, I can certainly erode some of those boundaries, maybe not get rid of them completely, but I think there's a journey on that vector for sure.
Well, we didn't talk about that particular thing ahead of time, and I sort of ambushed you with the philosophical bomb there, but I would like you to chew on it. And if you want to write up in the future what your take is as someone who's managed both seniors and juniors for a long time, what are those titles? Are those leftover things? Because titles come and go. Things do change, right? I mean, janitors are now sanitation engineers or whatever, right? Like, it's just the title, right? So I don't know about junior, senior anymore.
Yeah. No, that's I will take it under advisement. I don't lack for blog and content ideas, but I'll bump this closer to the top of the list for sure. So we as we wind this down, what else do you think is useful in terms of building trust in adopting AI tooling? Like, are there any things that you find really help erode barriers, build trust? Anything that you haven't talked about already?
Well, I can tell you the opposite. Every time there's an article about some zero-day exploit for some MCP tool, I literally, like, not cringe, but like, oh, now I've got to explain this. Now I've got to, overcome this, right? And people love to do some MCP deleted a production database through vibe coding, and that's the news that's being made. It's not John Capobianco just had a GitHub repo talk to a packet capture through MCP.
Right.
So if it bleeds, it leads. And I need people to understand there's some boomer bait out there and there's some FUD, as you say. I don't say fear, and I have a different acronym for FUD, right? But there's a lot of that out there. Now, building trust is one, actually using the thing, right? I mean, being a passenger in a car versus driving the car and having control is a measure of increasing your trust and reducing your fear and anxiety of the tool. Actually using it and understanding it, truly having an understanding. Avoid the Dunning-Kruger, right? I see a lot of that out there, people that don't use the tools, but postulate quite a bit about the tools.
Right.
But get back to protocols. There's a new RFC. And what does it do? It adds OAuth to MCPs and to agents.
Right. And the fact that it's come along so quickly, like that's really encouraging to me.
It really is.
And I hear you on if it bleeds, it leads. That's not new behavior in humanity. We've seen centuries of that. And I do think apart from the noise, there is a net benefit in vulnerabilities and problems being exposed because that way they'll get addressed.
Yes.
Would it be better if it was more objective reporting? Sure. But that and $5 will get you an extra large at Tim Hortons. So,
but the thing is, I think culturally, Scott, I feel there's a difference from a year ago. A year ago,
oh, sure.
some people, when I would show them Selector and their capabilities, would say, "You can't do this. Like this is not a possible thing." Right. Or I don't trust this to give me a valid root cause analysis. I just simply don't trust, broadly speaking. And they'd be no offense to you. You have a great product here. It looks wonderful, but I don't just trust AI to do what you're suggesting it can do.
Right.
A year later, people are being drawn to that capability. It's a complete whiplash effect of now so I think generally we're coming to accept that at a societal level,
right.
How does an individual contributor, like if they're still just not stuck on this idea that it's not to be trusted or it's another fad or this is going to go away, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I don't see this entire train being derailed and right. This is not vaporware anymore, right?
I totally agree. It's time to learn. It's past time to learn, right? What else do you want to call out about what Selector's doing? And where could people find more specifically on advances Selector's making in this space?
So Selector's having our very first AI summit. So an AI for network leaders in New York City on September 30th. Registration is open. We have limited seats and we're encouraging people that are actually interested, potential customers or enterprises that are partners, et cetera, practitioners to join us. It will be a free online event for the whole day as well. We have yourself, Dwan Lightfoot, Greg Freeman, and Jeremy Schulman as the 4 keynotes. I'm going to be doing a RAG session and an MCP session on the MCP, Selector's MCP. So it has come along at an incredible time, and it's really picking up a lot of traction. Almost every one of our customers are actually using it already or are interested in it. The idea being that you can really interface with our platform through almost anything now. Right. So we have this consumption layer at the top where you can use REST API. You can use the GUI, and I love our GUI in our dashboards. You can use the Copilot. We have a Jupyter Notebook integration, right? Well, now we have an MCP integration at the top that opens up other forms of clients to consume Selector as a tool or as a list of tools, right? It is really remarkable. We are really growing at an exponential rate. So keep an eye out on Selector for actual positions within Selector. There's a lot of new job openings and opportunities with us. And we're coming off an incredible Cisco Live. We're going to be at ONUG and AutoCon and SharkFest and an event, Tech event in Switzerland. I can go on and on. I am absolutely really enjoying the time. The other thing is Sebastian Maniak, who anyone from the F5 community, he has joined Selector a few months ago. He is actually actively building a sandbox demo. So we're hoping, and I'm not trying to promise anything, it's literally being worked on the roadmap, where you can reserve a Selector instance to play with your own hands on your own time. We're really excited about that. And Sebastian's a good friend of mine from the community for a while, and he's made an impact right immediately. So make sure you follow him. Make sure you connect with him on socials as well.
I'm hoping he'll be in New York, and I'm looking forward to seeing him.
He will. He's going to be there.
September 30th in New York, correct? You should register soon if you're one of these folks that really want to dive into what Selector's doing. You should, if you can't get there, stream the event. You'll hear at least other speakers. You can skip my section, but you'll benefit from everything else. I want to end on the one special question that no one gets away with out answering on this show. But I'm going to ask you a special version of the question.
Okay.
So in your evolution in network operations, you do this long enough, you've caused an outage, right? Now, would you like to admit to an interesting outage that you've caused, and how could you have addressed it if you had the AI tooling that you had today to deal with that outage?
Ooh, that's a good twist. So I'll have two. One that I directly caused, that was one of the things where I literally promised to the CTO in person, this will not bring down the core. And what did it do? It brought down the core. It was one of those like Han Solo, it wasn't my fault sort of things. Like when we traced it back, someone made an out of band change that fixed something critical, and my automation did not consider that because it wasn't in the source of truth. Right? So my code overwrites their fix, and we drop their fix, and everything goes to hell in the middle of the night. And I got to go into the office with the console and back out all this stuff. Now, where AI would have helped, it would have probably, I don't know that AI, it may have checked the running config against my proposed config and spotted this route that was a hot fix and said, this is not in your proposed config. Was this an out of band change?
Right.
The craziest thing I've ever seen that caused an outage, I was at the console of a 6500s, a pair of 6500s, in the data center. And in the drywall behind it, I literally see a Sawzall punch through the wall start drawing a line down the drywall. And all of the dust was literally going into the fans, right? They literally jam up and die. The two cores die. And this guy, and the drywall tips, right? There's a door frame, and I'm waving him off. What are you doing? We have a new UPS and it won't fit through the double doors. So we've got to punch a hole in here to get the UPS in. And I said, it's Tuesday at 2 p.m. We're doing business. You just the network is dead. You've killed our network. Wow. You don't think to put and then I go off on this guy, right? You don't think to put plastic up or let anyone know or Right. So we literally get a vacuum out. We pull all the fan trays, pull all the blades, vacuum them out, turn them back on, and those 6500s. So just so you know, you can cut the drywall behind them, and they will survive that.
Not a test case most people plan for.
I don't know that AI would help me in any case there, right? Maybe checking the HR process and not hiring the guy that's going to cut the drywall in the middle of the day.
Maybe, or at least more robust checking for maintenance. You're going to need a maintenance window to do this, buddy. Right. Well, John, it's always awesome to talk to you. Thank you. Any place else you want to point people to for your content? Specifics on YouTube, LinkedIn, anything like that?
Yeah. So I am very prolific, and it's really a stream of consciousness. So I don't apologize if people don't feel they can't keep up. I try to keep them under 10 or 15 minutes, my YouTube videos. I try not to go beyond that because it does kind of get a little bit boring after a few minutes watching YouTube. But YouTube, LinkedIn, and truly reach out. I will make time to get back to you on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever. If you have questions, if you want to get started. And I really enjoyed being on here, Scott. I've enjoyed getting to know you over the past couple of years. And I'm really excited to see you in New York.
Same here. Can't wait. Thank you so much. Thank you, Selector, for what you're doing. It's super interesting. And thank you, listeners, for another hour of your time on Total Network Operations. Please reach out with feedback, candidates for interviews on the program, things you'd like to see us do differently. You can hit me on LinkedIn or go to packetpushers.net/follow-up. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time on Total Network Operations.